Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 177. I guess this is like a bi-weekly podcast, or bi-monthly? As far as I know, bi-monthly refers to either like twice a month or once every 2 months. That's screwy. There should really be like semi-monthly? Semi-monthly feels like it would... No, that would be like half the month? It'd be like in the middle of the month, like once in the middle of the month. Anyway, maybe every 2 weeks, every week. Sometimes I just don't have a lot to talk about. This was kind of one of those months, and I need the extra week to build stuff up. So I'm also you might notice two things during this recording. One is that you might hear jackhammering outside of my window. By some miracle, 3 of my neighbors have decided that this is the perfect season to all start doing construction on their houses. So it's been like non-stop construction sounds for like 3 months. it's like, dude, it was at one point there was like hammering. There was like jackhammering that was so loud it was making me like anxious and upset. It was aggravating me, and it turned on, it flipped on some animal switch in my brain that was like, you got to get rid of this, you got to stop this. So you might hear that in the background. I like to keep the window open because I'm like a weird stickler about airflow. When I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher, my homeroom, well, you only have a homeroom teacher in 3rd grade. My teacher told the class about this anecdote about these people on her block where we were learning about, I think, fire alarms and other types of like just basic home safety stuff, stuff you should know. And we got to CO2 detectors, CO2 alarms, and she told us this story about this family in her neighborhood who all got sick around the same time in the winter. This is in Chicago. So, like, it's winter and you all get sick. Like, you're not leaving the house, dude. So they just, like, barricaded up the doors and they kept it shut. Like, everything shut. And they had, like, a CO2... They all kept getting more sick, so they kept staying inside. But they got like CO2 poisoning from being inside so much. That's what I remember. Like, that's what I remember her telling us. I might be completely misremembering that, but that's what it was in my mind. And that story stuck with me to where I if I can keep a window open, I will, because there's like, I don't even know if it's like a phobia, because I'm not like really afraid of it. It doesn't really get my heart pounding or anything, or I'm like, I'm really anxious about it. But I'm just like, I should have a window open in case I fall asleep and too much carbon monoxide builds up. It was carbon monoxide, I think. Am I either talking about CO2 or carbon monoxide? CO2 would be carbon dioxide, wouldn't it? I think I'm talking about carbon monoxide. Okay, yeah. That's like this it's like a completely irrational thing that I do that is, I'm like very calm about. So I'm not afraid, I'm just weird about it. And I know it's like completely nonsense. Like, you would have to have, like, I'm probably misremembering. I didn't fully understand what she was talking about because I was in the 3rd grade, but that's what it meant to me. And, I like having the window open. I like fresh air. I like the birds chirping. I like the jackhammering. The other thing you might notice about me is that I might sound a little weird because I've been awake. It's 9:47 as I record this, and I've been awake since like 4 p.m. yesterday because I'm in that... I try not to bring it up as often because I think it gets annoying. It's sort of repetitive that like once or like every month or two, I totally screw up my sleep schedule and I have to spend like a week getting it back on track. And I thought I did it yesterday. I woke up kind of early, but I was like, this is a step in the right direction. Then I fell asleep. When I say early, I mean like 3 a.m. And then I was like, maybe I could use like an extra nap a while later, you know? I was up for a while, and I thought I could maybe use like an hour or two more of sleep. My body probably woke up a little early, you know? And then I slept for 5 hours, and I woke up at 4 a.m. and it's like 4 p.m. and it's like, cool. No, that's great. Awesome. So now I'm just going to be awake for a while, and I was in kind of this state where I was like, yeah, I the sun's coming up, and and you know what, I need to record the podcast. I want to record the podcast. I'm a lazy bones, and I haven't done it in a bit. And I was, before that, I should go on like a nice walk to feel kind of refreshed. And then it started just pouring rain outside. I was like, all right, I guess I better boot up the podcast. And then as soon as I start recording, it clears up, and now it's just the sound. Now it's just jackhammer season outside. So I might sound a little strange, and my train of thought might be a little odd, but I'm just kind of tired, I guess. Sleep deprived? I don't know. I'm going to try to stay up as long as I can. Consequences be damned. I want to talk about a couple things that I've been building up. I've been retaining over the past week or two. First one, GameInformer came back. Okay, I don't even remember if I talked about this when it initially happened, but GameInformer, you might have heard, got shuttered very suddenly a year ago? 6 months ago? Something like that. No, it wasn't a year ago. It was yeah, probably around 6 months ago. And it was like this big shock. Because it was, okay, they're owned by GameStop, you know. Print media, not that popular. But you kind of figure that GameStop is sort of keeping them afloat as a print publication. They successfully pivoted into into digital and all that. You would never expect that they would get completely closed down. You would at least think GameStop would try to like sell them to make some quick cash or something to stave off the inevitable. But no. So GameInformer just killed one day. Total shock to the public as well as the actual staff. It's just one of these shitty things that happen so often in the games industry, where people find out that they're fired, that the company is dissolving the day that it happens with no warning. It extends to magazines as well. So that was shitty. I think from what I remember, I remember just seeing videos about like now laid off editors and staff members talking about like just the stuff that they stole out of the office because like, fuck it, I'm gonna take this statue home. But they had been just as suddenly revived. You know, I was just getting over them and they decided to come back to life. They were apparently bought out by a game studio called Gunzilla Games, who only have one game out, which is, you're going to be very excited to learn this, the very first game on the Guns blockchain. So it's some like trashy NFT blockchain game developer, and apparently, so you're all immediately like, oh god, what is happening? Apparently their CEO gave a presentation at like a Web3 conference where he was basically like, this shit is like fake and it doesn't work. It is a completely failed, everyone in this room is a fucking dope. our company is in shambles. Funding dropped. I think like I was reading like 93%. Absolutely ludicrous failure. And they were like, okay, the market does not work. The Web3 market does not work. It's not real, especially not for video games. Video games were such a pipe dream thing. Web3, are you kidding me? Blockchain video games? Oh my god, I hate Silicon Valley so much. I hate living in Silicon Valley. Every time I'm on the freeway, I see some fucking billboard that says like creative management solutions powered by AI. And I want to shoot it. I want to treat it like a Tijuana street sign and fill it with holes. Not for any lascivious intentions, just malicious ones. I guess lascivious intentions could be malicious, but that's kind of unsavory. I don't want to fuck the billboard. I want to kill it. So I have no idea. So you're be like, oh, this does not bode well for GameInformer. Now, I will say that apparently, according to them, they made this video explaining everything that happened. They said they hired back the entire staff, which is a very nice move that does generate some goodwill. And they also mentioned something about, like, yes, they are owned by Gunzilla, but they are also operating as, like, GameInformer Publishing or GameInformer, like, Ltd or something like that. So I guess in the case that, let's say, Gunzilla decides to again shutter they're not going to support them anymore, hopefully GameInformer themselves are like their own entity that they can retain the rights to stuff. Hopefully there's some kind of reinforcement there. Yeah, I don't know. So the theories on this range from the very cynical of like they're doing this so that they can have the GameInformer staff promote crypto, which multiples of their editors have been vocal about not liking blockchain stuff, and it would be kind of weird. It would probably be a really bad idea to suddenly just flip around on that. Maybe it'll happen, but it seems like a bad idea. There's also the possibility that because they realized Web3 is such a bad idea, that they saw that GameInformer was just floating around there in the ether and decided to scoop them up. I'm going to close my damn window. I'm closing that shit. I don't care if I die of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's better than feeling annoyed at the noise. You might still hear it. That's what's crazy. You might still hear it. Anyway. What was he talking about? Oh, yeah, right. So, it could have literally just been that they were like, fuck, what do we do? We still have another game in development. Let's buy GameInformer, I guess. Let's diversify. Let's diversify. I don't know. I was a reader of GameInformer when I was a kid. I think my mom, we went to GameStop, quite a bit when I was growing up. And I think like at some point they just like tricked her into signing up for a GameInformer subscription. And I liked the magazine a lot. And so she just didn't mind. She just kept paying for it the whole time, which was great. I don't even know, like, after we moved, if she kept paying for the subscription. It's probably lapsed or something. Well, it's probably definitely lapsed. If, maybe, I don't know. If they went under. Maybe they got their old mailing list or something. In any event, I read a lot of GameInformer when I was a kid, and that was a I would say a pretty substantial like part of my growth into like learning about video games and stuff like that. I wouldn't say, Game Informer to me was always really fun. And that might be because I just have an association with it due to that really wonderful feeling of walking in, getting home from school on, whatever day of the month that it usually came in. And the apartment we lived in had 3 mailboxes at the little like front foyer entrance. And there was like multiple doorways going up to like different. It was like a 3 flat apartment. And we lived on the first floor. And so they had 3 mailboxes on the entrance foyer. And the mailbox, they were just like lift up the flap things. And so the magazine was always too big to like fit. It was too tall to fit inside. So it was always left like, we'd always come home to it. What would you call it? Folded up? In like a little, like a twist, like twisted, sticking out of the mailbox. And that's a very like kind of nice childhood memory for me. And it kind of makes me just think about like the smell of like my old house and the different seasons of like the fucking Chicago area. And it elicits a lot of kind of nice nostalgic memories for me. So I don't know how much that colors my perception or my feelings on Game Informer as a magazine itself, but I just remember it being really fun. They had a lot of fun stuff. It was the only one I read, so I couldn't really compare and contrast. But I remembered like their like top 10s that they would do. I remember the previews that they would do for games, and just like I'd come home and I'd get the magazine and I'd flip through it. What I always did, I would skim through it in my room and just kind of, as I skimmed, read maybe stop to read the things that I was more interested in. Like maybe there was an article here or there that caught my attention, or a game I was interested in reading a review for. And then later that night when I was in bed, I would like go in and like deep read the whole thing. I remember talking to Molly about this in our interview, and that was a very special kind of unique part of a magazine. She loves physical print media, and specifically magazines. She's loved magazines like her whole life. And we were talking, I think you probably hear it in the full interview, about how the special little parts of reading a physical print magazine. And for me, that was like, I was probably like one of the last generation to really read a magazine. And it was kind of, again, like kind of by complete chance that my mom just happened to sign up for that thing. But yeah, that's like, because it's, okay, you get this magazine and that's kind of all you've got. That's all you've got. But it was also, it kind of made me feel like I was in, I was in the in group a little bit, and I was a little more aware of what was going on. I did that thing that of course you do as a kid where you like absorb other people's opinions so you can sound kind of like kind of informed. It was Game Informer, so maybe, what were they expecting? I definitely remember holding certain opinions about like, I don't even remember who it was, but like some studio or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, those guys. And like, I never played a game. I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. I just remember like a snarky comment by an editor. And I was like, the reference was completely lost on me. But I just parroted it. Like, yeah, that guy, he's a hack or something like that. I think I still have my magazine somewhere back there. So it kind of does warm my heart in a nostalgic way to see them returning. That's nice. And it's, funny enough, even I think one of the reasons there was such an outcry when the shutdown happened, it wasn't just because it was so sudden and it was so, they got screwed over so badly. There was also this kind of weird thing where, like, and I don't mean this as necessarily like a good thing, But in all of those, like, game journalists, game critic, game, yeah, like that whole thing where there's that subset of people who are really primed to just hate on any kind of gaming journalism. The people they'll see like a score for one, like a bad score for one game, and then like a different game that's similar gets a good score, and the games are reviewed by different people like years apart, and they'll be like, dude, so IGN has no consistency. And it's like, do you think that they're like a monolith or something? Do you think that they're like a big soupy hive mind that spits out reviews? It's like, I don't know, that like weird look. There's plenty of problems with game journalism that game journalists will happily tell you about, but the fucking like Gamergate type adjacent shit that is just, I don't know, kind of, I just get kind of sick of it. It feels kind of juvenile after a certain point. Like, man, these people are probably working for fucking peanuts. They're working for peanuts. And like, yeah, maybe they have a whack take every once in a while. Like you don't. And some people just take it way too seriously. Look, I'll criticize like I made the other day on the old Blue Sky, I made like a big call out thread. This is wacky. Let me finish my thing first. In all of, even among those people who like would be game journalists, Game Informer never came up. It just never came up in those conversations. Maybe someone did who had like a real vendetta against Game Informer for whatever reason, but just even amongst like the most vitriolic game wars, the more gays, there was just never real like hate for the company like that, which I think is kind of interesting. I think it's kind of interesting. They maybe that's an indicator that they never really rocked the boat, but I think it's also just kind of like, I don't know, I think they were just generally well liked. Yeah, so I'm glad that they're back. I'm glad that there's like another publication. I want to quickly talk about so I was like taking a break from writing or something like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. It was like last month. I don't even remember. It was a bit ago. And I was taking like a 20-30 minute break. And the Nintendo Life review for the Guilty Gear Strive Switch port popped up for me on YouTube. And I decided, oh, well, maybe that would, I'm actually kind of curious. Normally, I would not really care about like a port, a review of a port. But I was actually kind of curious at how well the game ran. And even when I clicked on it, the review was already 3 weeks old. So I was a little behind the boat. I sort of forgot that it came out because it's like the Switch port. But look, my woke Benihana chef might be playing it on the Switch port. But I'm sorry, that's not the place to be. I'm sorry. Did I even mention that our woke Benihana chef was interested in playing it on Switch because that's the only console he had that could run it. Anyway, because there's all those jokes about, hey, Guilty Gear, how's it gonna run on? There was like a pretty funny tweet about getting robbed, and then I take out my Nintendo Switch running Guilty Gear Strive and hurl it at the thief to use as an improvised explosive device in self-defense. And apparently, hey, the port runs very well. Impressive. Nice. But what really struck me was I was watching this review, and it is a video version of a text review that's on their website. And as I was listening to the narration, and mind you, the narration is not the writer, something kind of hit me in a weird way, like some phrase, some kind of verbiage, and I was like, Man, that's weird. Like the first, like it started actually. It started off with like a slight thing that was like, I kind of disagree with that. I sort of disagree with that statement about the game or the series or whatever. And then like it started getting more. It started building up. There was more of things like that I was like, that like there was a little detail that was wrong about like the Roman cancels, and then there was like a weird phrasing that and then I started listening to it more and more. And as I get through the video, I'm like, holy shit, this whole review is like AI generated trash. What? Like it's maybe some portion human written, but wow, this is genuinely like absolutely AI generated. And I could tell, I actually went to go read the text review, which is identical to the video review. And there's like certain things that really tipped me off. So one of the most obvious things was that AI language learning models, like text generation things, they do what I call it like mixed truths. They get things wrong in a way that a human being would not. A human being makes errors and about like very broad like bullet point facts. Does that make sense? Like they'll be in the list of facts, they'll be missing an entire bullet point. Like when I made a video about ill bleed, and I just totally missed that there's a tutorial area in the hub world. For some reason it's optional. I thought I could have sworn I explored the whole thing. I just totally missed it. Now I'll cop to that. My thing about there not being a tutorial was technically wrong. I do think it's like a little ridiculous that I completely missed it. And I feel like I walked around that whole place. Maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. I feel like it should have been mandatory in, I don't know, like the mandatory first level or something like that. Anyway, like that's stuff that I just missed the whole thing. And AI will get things wrong where it'll take like part of a true fact. It'll take part of a true fact and then mix it with like the second half of a different fact. Or maybe something is like just replaced with some random gibberish, like a AI hallucination word. And like, let me like look this up because there's a really good example. There's a really good example of what I'm talking about. That's pretty early on. Yeah, the Switch edition, Nintendo Switch edition. Okay, so first of all, while the Roman cancel has been around since Guilty Gear XX Reload, not true. Just straight up not true. It was in the game since X. Not even like the original, like vanilla XX, specifically Reload. In Strive, it has been simplified. Nope. It is so that was the first thing that I was like, no, it's not from that game. And no, this is actually the most complex that the Roman cancel system has ever been. By slamming 3 buttons and depending on the level of your tension gauge meter? No. It's always 50%. Does not depend on the level or anything. The Roman cancel has blue, purple, or red states that trigger offensive or defensive properties. Really weird way to phrase that. Also, all of them are like utility / offense, except for yellow Roman cancel, which is not mentioned, which is the actual defensive one. Blue and red cancels, for example, are aggressive, either in neutral or during attack, and help to extend combos beyond their natural endpoint. While purple cancels are defensive, helping you escape terminal battery by buffering your opponent away. What? Like, that was the one sentence that really made me start listening like a lot more intentionally. Because I was like, terminal battery? What are you talking about? So this is what I mean, right? This is like a mixed truth. Purple Roman cancels are defensive, buffs helping you escape by buffering your opponent away. And I realize they're talking about burst. They're talking about goddamn the burst. That's not purple Roman. They took part of one thing and part of a human would never do that. A human would never just get like misname, misname, I guess. The get the wrong name for a mechanic like that, especially if you've actually played the game. The whole review is like this, and it gets actually even deeper with like they call it sprites, which are they are not sprites, they are 3D models. So it's this case where like even if it's not AI generated, the writer is really awful. This is a very bad review. It gets a lot of things just straight wrong. And is also like poorly written. I do not believe that the writer has played the game. I cannot believe it. Here's a phrase that I think is a really good, a sentence that I think is a really good, what I call it, example of another tell for AI writing. Blows positively resonate, pyrotechnic visual feedback lighting up the screen, and getting a handle on a specific character's moves and combinations is incredibly satisfying. Hang on, there's like some other... Yeah, here's another one. Giant 3D edifices pass by in the backgrounds, from whale-shaped airships to populated promenades floating downriver, while beefy cell-shaded sprites duke it out until a super attack is produced, whereby the seemingly 2D becomes fascinatingly 3D as the camera zooms in to frame the action. Absolutely, what the genuinely difficult to read and listen to. So AI has no taste. AI does not have taste, and it doesn't have like a sense of, I call it weight in writing. There might be like a more official term, but words, every word in a sentence has a certain weight that it adds to the sentence, right? There are words like most of the ones I just said. There are, like, the, a, in, like tons and tons of words like that I just said, there are tons of words that are so light in their, I don't know, like what would I even call it? In their density? I don't know, that are so light in a sentence that your brain barely registers them. It doesn't really pay attention. They're just they're there to bridge the more important, heavier parts of the sentence, the more key ideas. These are like, the nouns, the subject, the verb, and the direct object and stuff like this. Something like the adjectives as well. I said, Tigan went to the store. Your brain hears Tigan, store, and then, went. Like, that's kind of like the order that you focus on those in, right? You don't catch any of the other words really, but you totally understand it, because those words are just like vapor, They're like vapor words. So when you're writing, you have to create if you're like, it's this really kind of amateurish feeling thing. I probably do it in like first drafts of stuff, but it's like it's like, oh boy, I have a thesaurus on hand. I'm going to use the heaviest possible words at every possible moment that I can. Like this, again, like from the thing I just read. Giant edifices, whale-shaped, populated promenades floating downriver, beefy, cell-shaded, duke it out, produced, fascinatingly. It's like this is all in one sentence. It is so heavy that your brain like doesn't really know what parts of the sentence are important and what you should pay attention to. So much of writing and communication is actually just contrast. I've talked about this before when I was talking about like public speaking, but a lot of communication is recognizing what the most important parts of what you're trying to say are, and then giving them the appropriate weight in your speech or in your writing. And that comes to your word choice. If you're speaking, that's your inflection, where you choose to start and stop and things like that. And AI has absolutely no sense of that. It has absolutely no sense. It just jams. It's so adjective heavy. It uses such weighty adjectives all the time in a way that like maybe like a bad human writer would do, but it's like really obvious, especially when you combine it with this other stuff. What's I don't know, like another. Is there another like good example that I can pull from? I don't know, but like the whole review is just varying shades of that, and it was genuinely shocking to me. And this is from a reviewer. This is from an editor who has written, according to his profile, 101 reviews. And let's see, the Saturday. He's got a new one out on Saturday. Like, is it the same? I made this like whole Blue Sky thread, like adding Nintendo Life like twice, because like genuinely, what the fuck? It's just like really shocking to me. Like I would be really upset. I would not want to allow like actual just trash like that. It's a bad review. It's not informative on anything besides the port runs well. But if someone has literally not played the game, which you can't even guarantee from how uninformed the review is, then it's like I would fucking be very cross with that guy. Like genuinely not cool, dude. Yeah, crazy. And it's weird because it's like I don't know if I want to say that like I'd be like, yeah, that guy got fired. I don't know. I don't think I'd be like really happy about that. But it is like, hey man, there are like consequences to like being bad at your job. I think if you're a reviewer and you have to use AI to write your review, you should like, actually I think maybe you should be fired. Like, you should not be in this line of work if you are so bad at something that you literally cannot do it. Like, if your surgeon... Like, what if your surgeon was like, no, I'm looking at the WikiHow article right now. You go, what the hell? What? Dude, my brain is open right now. Anyway, on the topic of gaming publications, I had a conversation with a friend the other day where I kind of like hit upon something that I've always I've felt in the background, but it hasn't been very, I don't know. It took a certain conversation to like elicit it out of me, to really draw it out. And it's that I think it's kind of weird that we have video game publications. Like, okay, if you look at any other medium, yeah, there are enthusiast publications for movies, for music, for books, right? But also, like, you can open a copy of the New York Times and, like, right under where they're, like, copying for U.S. war crimes it'll be a review of, like, a Kendrick Lamar album, you know? Like, they have people there, like, you know, culture writers who write about culture. They'll write about movies. They'll write about books. And it's not the main focus of the newspaper or, the publication, but it's there. It's considered news. News isn't just like things that are happening in the area. That includes like what is the cultural output of society. If you go to your local newspaper, there's probably stuff about local stuff going on because that is part of society. And I think it's absolutely crazy that I have the AP News app on my phone, and I get notifications about whatever awful things happening in the world right now, somewhat frequently. So I figured, so there's a couple things that bother me about it. Number one is that you can turn on and you can toggle different categories that you want to get updates about. You cannot toggle off sports for some goddamn reason. That is considered an integral part of the AP experience. There are so many other things that you can toggle off, but for some reason, sports is like, no, Tygan, you have to know every single time there is a college football game, you have to know the updated AP Top 25. I don't even know what that means. I don't watch football. I barely know how football is played. American football. Ooh, I'm adding shit. I'm adding bullshit to the fucking to the agenda now. And I find it ludicrous. I really do find it like luda that they will send me new like updates about like a movie I have never heard of that's in theaters, or even just like a popular movie that's coming out. And I have never, I think genuinely, the last time I saw a news update, like a news story from the Associated Press about video games, the biggest entertainment industry in the world, was, I think, when Cyberpunk came out. It was that, or maybe Baldur's Gate. Like, and there was a gulf in between them, if they even ran a Baldur's Gate story. Like, isn't that weird? That's kind of crazy. This might be just an American thing. I don't know if like other countries have more typical or have a little bit more embrace of the biggest entertainment medium in the world, the biggest industry. The Washington Post had a gaming division that they completely closed down, save for one brave soldier, the venerable Gene Park. Shout out to Gene. He's cool. He's the only guy. It falls on his shoulders. And it's like, he's just one guy. Like, he can write some op-eds. He can review like a couple games a month, depending on how big they are, and it's like, it's ridiculous that it genuinely is just, it's the owners of these magazines not understand. There's a hard generational wall, and they don't understand video gaming, and they don't, I feel like I'm like fucking in like 2012 and I'm making a video about like Jack Thompson and Fox News, but like they don't understand the medium. They're not interested in it, and they also in their I can't think of the word right now, in their stuck in their waysness. Been up since 4 p.m. yesterday. They also fail to see why anybody would be interested in that content, right? Like, I would like to see video game reviews from non-enthusiast publications, not just as a marker of like a kind of cultural acceptance, which is nice, but I'm not like that much of a whore. I just want the perspective. Like, I want something that isn't involved in like the horrible fucking gamer swirl conversation, where I'm like, fuck, I feel kind of bad because I like this Kotaku article. There are plenty of great outlets, right? Like, Eurogamer is really good. VG, fuck, are they still called VGC? Which one of them had a name change? Gamesindustry.biz. I love that it's .biz. Or is it Game Developer? Someone had a name change recently, and I cannot remember who. Aftermath, I've enjoyed some editorials from them as well. Like, there are good publications that have been like consistently good for getting industry news. And I don't really read reviews personally. But like the obviously good ones exist. There are things from like the more like the IGNs or the PC Gamers or the Kotakus, and they can be of shaky reliability. But it's like it would just be kind of nice. I think it would be nice to just have something as like a more I feel like someone who's writing for a non-enthusiast like a generalist magazine or newspaper or publication, whatever they are now, is going to at least have some sort of a different perspective. I feel like I'd trust them a little more. Do I? I don't know if I mean that, or if I'm just tired. Maybe I'm just trying to like justify my point. You know who had a really good... Okay, speaking of Cyberpunk, of all people, the BBC had a very good review of Cyberpunk 2077. Go look up the video review for that. It's like 6 minutes long. And when I first saw it, I was like, 6 minutes? Like, how are they gonna... That's the only reason I clicked on it. I was like, a 6-minute review of Cyberpunk? Like, really? And it's like genuinely a very good review. It's concise. It gets immediately to the points. They're well articulated. I understand the reviewer's perspective, and I really like the way that he articulated things. And it was just like a very good review from the BBC. It was critical. It gave the game points where he felt like it did succeed. It said some things were just middling. It talked about the bugs in like a pretty reasonable way, I thought, while, you know, still kind of being realistic about it's probably going to get fixed. But yeah, you know, all that. And it was like, damn, the BBC really pulled out. They really pulled through on this one. Yeah, I think it's just like a annoying generational thing that it's like, I'm almost like rooting for that. Like, I'm trying to help you guys. Like, I'm speaking directly to the damn New York Times or something. But like, it would help your readership. There are so many people. Who would be interested in reading, you know, video game news that is not from an enthusiast source, or that you could scoop up, right? And I think the fact that so much professional video game discussion is kind of trapped in the enthusiast bubble is really kind of been detrimental to that discussion. It kind of makes things sort of inbred. Like, the air is getting a little stale. It's getting a little stanky. When you have a bunch of people who like live and breathe this shit, or purport to, and everyone is like reading from the same magazines, which are all hyper focused on this one thing. I say magazines, but you know, these websites that are all hyper focused on this like one medium. I think that that's just like a recipe for like volatility, because like you're getting all these people who probably have differing opinions on stuff, and you're shoving them into like one box. There's nowhere for like a casual gamester to hop in on this stuff. You know what's crazy also is that I don't know, like, okay, do you remember when the Me Too thing happened? And that was, everyone knew about that. Everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein when that happened. I remember where I was when that was coming out, and when I was like, where I was like in high school. And that was a big cultural moment. I think it's really weird that the Blizzard stuff did not stick as hard as it felt like it was going to. And, like, okay, when the Blizzard thing happened, which Bobby Kotick categorically denies, so any Blizzard truthers, I'm sorry, but this is an unsafe space. Crazy how he has to be the only person in the world with that opinion. That is really funny in a fucked up way. When that happened, when the Blizzard scandal happened, that was the biggest thing of that, the biggest story of that kind that had ever happened in the video game industry. It was absolutely, it was unparalleled. Any kind of like big industry reaching drama beforehand would have been like, I don't know, something like a Gamergate movement, or there was nothing, like there's nothing even to compare, right? That reached the heights of how high profile that whole situation was, how deep it went, how much information there was. And I mean, yeah, I was talking about it on this podcast for months. And I remember going on campus with Kat. I went to visit Katrina on campus one day and hang out for what was it, an event? Was it Halloween? It was something. It might have been Halloween. I remember going on campus with her then. But I went with her, and I remember, like, in the midst of that, in the absolute heat of like stories coming out every day about Blizzard, like overhearing, like waiting outside of one of the classrooms, you know, there's a group of people, and a very like gay seeming person, I guess they say queer now, you know, to be more vague about it, to be more general. I remember just seeing them and overhearing them talking about how into Overwatch they were. And I just found something like really strange about that. Like, I don't know. It really was like, oh, I feel like you wouldn't be talking like this about a Blizzard game if you knew. Like, I don't know if they knew that Blizzard made Overwatch. Maybe they just knew Overwatch. If they knew that Blizzard made Overwatch, I really don't think they knew about the scandal. Dude, like the fucking breast milk thing had just come out. It was like the peak of that shit. And something about it was just really, really struck me. Because it's like that thing had been in my mind so heavily. I was so invested in that and covering that. And just to hear someone who obviously just did not know about any of it was like, whoa, that's weird to me. Not on them. This isn't like to put that on them. But like, it was weird to me that you would think that the biggest scandal of its sort would reach more people, would be a little more high profile. But no, it genuinely like wasn't. There were people who heard about it, but like the casual audience, the normies, and hey, look, everyone's a normie for most things, but like gaming normies, right? Normal people. Not a peep. And that was so weird. Like, everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein when that happened. Nobody knew who the fuck Harvey Weinstein was. Obviously, they knew his movies. They knew the actresses who were exploited. But no one really knew who the fuck Harvey Weinstein was. Like, people know who Blizzard... some people know. I feel like way more people know who Blizzard... What Blizzard is. And like that was, everyone knew about that, and that was like for good reason. And part of me wonders like, damn, if there was just more of a vested interest in covering games industry news, from new releases to op-eds to just stuff that's happening, news happening in the industry. Like, would more people have been aware of that? Like, would that have been a more widespread story? Like, I just find it really strange, and it's just weird that Blizzard, like, kind of bounced back from it. I get that they probably laid off, like, everyone who was involved in that. Like, they got rid of all those people. It's just, again, it was just, I don't know. It leaves me in a state of bewilderment. Yeah. Dude, I've been talking for like 55 minutes about game industry stuff, or gaming magazines and publications. Whoa, what's my next topic? I don't know what my next topic is. Anyway, do you guys heard of that new Fatal Fury City of the Wolves? So, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, the 5th, 6th, 7th game in the Fatal Fury series, that they're bringing back. Everyone was really excited for it. Made an announcement like a while ago. That was, I don't know if it was posted to his account, but it was just Cristiano Ronaldo is coming to Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. And everyone said, what? There was no information. It was like, what does that mean? He's coming to the game. Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the world's most famous, accomplished football players in a game. Like, so people are thinking, like, is it going to be like special promotional skins? Is he going to do like a live stream where he plays the game? Is he going to be like an NPC? Is he going to be a playable character? Haha. Are they going to do alternate costumes with like his number on it or something? Or maybe they're going to have like a soccer themed character who has like a Ronaldo skin or something, like a themed costume or something like that. Is he just going to do like an exhibition match or something like that? Well, a couple days ago we got our answer. It's just him. It's just Cristiano Ronaldo. The man. He is a fully playable character in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, which is an announcement that's been met with a lot of odd. It's a grab bag of reactions. So I would say the positive things are from, okay, I don't know. I didn't really delve into. I could probably just look. Okay, I know. Obviously, when he posted it to his Twitter, I'm not even gonna bother looking. There was probably a bunch of his fans going, "Oh, Ronaldo!" What is like goat for like in like Portuguese? What do they say? Do they call people the goat? I don't really pay attention to soccer. I know I have like vague ideas of who important people are because my brother used to play soccer, but I do not. So like I just kind of picked up a bunch of stuff by osmosis. Like he and my dad were into watching it and stuff like that. So, but I don't know. I know of Ronaldo. He's like the most famous footballer in the world. Basically, like living, actively playing, but that has also elicited like opposite end reactions. So there's the people who are like, there's people who are excited because it's Ronaldo, who are just Ronaldo fans. There were a lot of people who just thought it was really funny, And it's like, yeah, fuck it, Ronaldo's in the game. And then you get to the more mixed to negative reactions. A lot of people felt like this was kind of a corporate move. Mind you, SNK is partly, maybe like majority owned? I think it's majority owned by a Saudi Arabian like prince who like kills journalists, like kills foreign journalists. And he also owns the team that Ronaldo currently plays for. And so tie in, they probably got told to put him in. I saw a lot of sentiment online that this felt like corporate. The reason I'm talking about other people's opinions on it are that I really don't know how to feel about it, but I'm leaning towards kind of, it's somewhere between, it's like it's so ridiculous, it's either so lame that it's kind of wraps around to being ridiculous and kind of funny, and I'm okay with it, or it's so ridiculous that it wraps back around to being kind of lame and I'm not into it. And I really don't know because I don't have much investment in... So first of all, I am not the biggest Garo stan, right? I'm not the biggest Garo head. So I've played a little bit of it. It's a very fun game. The first, well, I guess the previous one. It's a really cool game. But I don't have like a super big attachment. There's obviously the fact of like, this could have been like a Garo character and not Ronaldo. But the there is an element. Okay, so the first thing is if you look up the trailer, he looks bad. The character model looks bad. It strikes me as one of those situations where they stuck too closely to a real life model and did not properly stylize him, probably for contractual reasons. Like there were stipulations about how accurate the character model had to be, and they had to follow those to the letter. So he looks weird. His face is too smooth because of like the game's art style, but his proportions aren't right. Like he has small eyes and like a small kind of face. I feel like he's not expressive like any of the other characters. His costume is very bland and safe, and it's like, yes, he is a footballer. He's in his uniform, the number. So it feels, you can feel the corporate hand. You can feel the corporate hand, or the hand of the outside forces kind of pushing and pulling on the creative process. I don't know how big fans of international football the SNK developers are. But it does... People who mention that this feels kind of like corporate and soulless and done out of obligation to appease like the war criminal prince. I kind of get it. It's not super jazzed to me. I think there's a real like lack of enthusiasm in the whole thing. Something about it. I think just like his moveset looks kind of cool. The idea of, it's a weirdly underexplored archetype for a character in a fighting game of a sports-based fighter. SNK is actually kind of the one, unless I'm forgetting somebody, they're kind of the one developer that does have sports-themed fighters, like characters. That was the American sports team from like KOF 96 or something, who have never reappeared ever, except in like dream matches, which is kind of a shame because they're actually like kind of cool. Especially the boxer guy, Heavy D. He's actually a cool character. I like him as a boxing character more than Vanessa. Woo. Anyway, yeah, it's like I kind of would have preferred if they had just done an original soccer themed character and then just gave him a Ronaldo skin. And I feel like in the future, that's probably what they're just going to do. If they ever decide, if people get really attached to playing Cristiano Ronaldo and there's like a sequel or they do like a dream match thing or something like that, they would just make an original character and just give them the same move set, right? On the topic of the reason I say that is because, oh man, it is like a lot of, because it's like he's not even like, he's just there. He's not a part of the world. He is just there. Not even like he fell out of a portal or anything. He's just in the game now. It feels really, the feeling of obligation. There's like a potential legal issue. I don't want to be like getting too far ahead or anything or being like alarmist, but there's like a not impossible chance that Cristiano Ronaldo's likeness being in this game could like genuinely fuck it up in the future for like re-releases and stuff like that, or being ported, something like that. I can't imagine that his likeness is very cheap, and that stuff comes out more than you would expect. Anything with there are lots of examples of, oh, there was a licensed song in here, it's got to be taken out, or there was a licensed someone's image used in game, that's got to be taken out, or it just prevents the thing from being used because someone else owns it and they don't give the sign off, and it's not really something that you can just take out. So I don't know, I see a world where this creates problems for the game because it is not SNK owned entirely anymore. I mean, Christ, even the Marvel versus Capcom games were just like dead. They just could not be re-released or ported or anything for years, like 10 years, because Disney and Marvel and Capcom had like a kind of sour grapes relationship after MVCI, and just like had to repair that after a while. So there's issues that it brings up. There is also the fact that Ronaldo has like sort of outstanding sexual assault allegations against him, which is like, oh, cool. I like SNK's commitment to being the most ethically questionable fighting game developer for reasons that are kind of outside the company itself. Like, SNK the dev is pretty cool. It's just like, oh, they're owned by that guy that kills journalists, and also they put a guy with like sexual assault allegations as a playable character in the game. Now, mind you, none of the allegations have ever like come through, and he's been indicted for something, and he's like been guilty of stuff. But like, that's because you can go read up on like the case. It's because like the woman's lawyer collected information badly. Like, her lawyer fucked it up, and because they had evidence that could not be admissible in court, the judge dismissed the case. So it's like, and I think with the other one, like, he settled with her, and it's like, that is not the decisive win that you would hope to see. That does not, it's just allegations, but it's also like, all right. It does make you feel a little weird, right? So Cristiano Ronaldo in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. It actually reminded me, speaking of 2XKO, I wanted to quickly mention this. 2XKO, they recently had a big update. They had a big update where they revealed that they have their own roster update, will only be launching with 10 characters, which is like crazy paltry for a tag team game. And there's people defending it like, well, they're going to be updating it. And it's like, yeah. But like, unless they hit the ground running like immediately, that's pretty rough. Like if you are in a game with 4 different champions, like 4 different characters on each, for each team, that's like 40% of the game's roster. That's almost half the game's roster on screen. That's a little that's pretty light. I have to imagine Riot has given them like peanuts and a sticker sheet for a budget for this. And it's impressive what they've done and what they've got going and like the visuals and all that. But like that's the only way that I can reconcile how little progress has been made on it over the course of like 9-ish years. It is kind of crazy how slow the progress is. So at the moment they had 7 characters revealed, but it's really funny. Just before the podcast, they actually uploaded a trailer. I don't know why they didn't include this with like the big like 50-minute long update that they did, but they actually uploaded a trailer for the 8th character. And I was kind of shocked. I was genuinely kind of shocked given like the other champions that are represented in the game. But of all people, they went with Blake Griffin from the LA Clippers. That's right. And he's got like alternate skins from when he was on the Celtics. And I think he played for a different, I don't really know basketball very well, but he's got like it's an interesting pick. He's clearly got a lot of range, but he's got very like vulnerable hurt boxes on his limbs, it looks like from the trailer. I enjoyed the part where he has like his super move where he like dunks the opponent like 3 times. Gave me real like Dengeki Bunko flashbacks. So I want to be the first to welcome Blake Griffin to the Runeterra universe. Welcome, Blake. Enjoy your stay. Speaking of nothing in particular, the Videogame Workers union, the United Videogame Workers, that's what it's called. Thanks for really sticking the landing on that one, me. There is now a national union, an American-based national union for the video game industry, which is like kind of a big deal. This is a joint partnership with the Communications Workers of America, as well as the American Federation of Musicians, interestingly. That probably has to do with like people who work in composing and stuff like that. This was revealed around the middle of the month at the 2025 Game Developers Conference. And it's good. It's good news. I mean, in the midst of all of these layoffs, this has been a really abysmal year for the industry in a lot of ways. This year and last year. The layoffs have been hitting really hard. It's sort of and I'm going to be honest, the U.S. economy is kind of going into bad mode. We're having like I don't know if you noticed, but there's like a fascist takeover of my government that's going on right now. And generally, fascist states don't really last for longer than like 10 years and aren't really like great for regular people. They kind of involve a lot of like, it's basically just like a looting of the country by like power holders. So I don't anticipate the US economy improving too much in the next couple years. And I imagine that these post-COVID contractions are going to continue into just kind of a general economic downturn. That's like the point. I'm not going to get into like a whole political rant, but that's like kind of the playbook. Like the point is to crash the economy. Yeah, having some kind of like worker representation, even if it's just in like video games, is like nice, because I imagine that there's gonna be a lot of turmoil in American-based businesses for a while, and because we're in like the end of our government society kind of phase of our life cycle. So hopefully we can at least keep the video games around. I would like to at least keep them around. I'm glad that this has been formed. It sucks that so much abuse had to happen in order to really spur it, but that's why labor laws exist, as they're slowly being eroded by the people trying to intentionally crash the economy. And this is hopefully, this is like pretty good news. This is actually good news. Woo! You know what else is not? It's not good news. It's not bad news. It's just interesting news. Tencent is investing 1.16 billion euros in Ubisoft's new subsidiary. So Ubisoft has formed, so it's starting to happen. It's starting to catch up. There's been this question of Ubisoft is like this big bloated whale, and they have too many staff. They have too much stuff. The projects get too big, and it is just not scalable. It's not stable or yeah. It what the heck is the word that I'm looking for? It's consistent? So I don't know what the word dude, I've been waiting for too long. So like, okay, when is Ubisoft gonna fold? And it looks like this really feels like the beginning of that process. Now, apparently, Assassin's Creed Shadows was quite the success, critically and commercially. So, good for them, I guess. I'm glad that the game was good. Going into that release, there was a lot of pressure on that game's shoulders and that team's shoulders. Because if that thing flopped, there was a decent chance that like that would be the first real domino to topple Ubisoft's little French kingdom. But it didn't, so it looks like it's going to be just kind of like, instead of like a big dramatic series of failures, like a slightly slower petering out. And that's kind of my prediction. That's kind of what this reads to me as. Forming a new... So what they have done is they have formed a new subsidiary. And it's basically like, here's this subsidiary... Do they even have like a name for it? No? No, like they don't even have a name for this subsidiary. It's basically just... This is the part of the company that's handling all of the actual money maker, like valuable properties. So it's coming from TechNode, courtesy of Jesse Wu. Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. So yeah, basically Rainbow Six, Far Cry, and Assassin's Creed. The 3 ones that matter. Including past titles, ongoing projects, and future releases. So just like the whole those entire franchises. 6 studios in Montreal and other locations will also join the subsidiary. Ubisoft will grant exclusive, permanent global IP rights to the subsidiary and receive royalties. This is the part. This is the part where you're like, okay, they are slowly cannibalizing them. They're slowly chopping pieces of themselves off to sell. Like, I don't really need, who needs a liver? Who needs I've got 2 kidneys. I could go without one, you know? I could spare a kidney. They're keeping Ghost Recon. They're keeping The Division and that stuff and whatever else they own. Rayman, I guess. But yeah, so Tencent is a partner who has invested, I'm making air quotes, you can't see that, I'm making air quotes, invested 1.16 billion euros into this subsidiary. They didn't buy it out. They did not buy it out. The company's not folding, okay? It's not a buyout. They're not buying those properties. They're just investing in the brand new subsidiary that happens to completely own most of their valuable properties. Like specifically the part that gets me is, oh no, this isn't like a particular wing that's been made at the company for managerial reasons or something like that. No, like Ubisoft doesn't own those anymore. They get royalties. Like they kind of own them, but they're like sort of sharing them, which is the first step. So yeah, Tencent wants some of that. They want to grab some of that. What do you think? Does this mark the slow, embarrassing auctioning off of the Ubisoft estate? Because I won't lie, there is, like, I say embarrassing, but there's a real chance that if this just ends up becoming like a Tencent thing, that like these properties might be treated better than with Ubisoft. I don't know. Tencent's big and evil, but like a change in management, who knows? Maybe they could be extremely benevolent. I also really like how much this article is enforcing that Ubisoft is in dire straits at the moment. Why it matters. In recent years, Ubisoft has seen the poor performance of several games, a fall in stock prices, and shareholder concerns over management. The deal is considered a key move in its financial restructuring and strategic transformation. I would love, there's a real magic. There's a real like magic in a very, like a magician, like a stage magician. There's this aspect to PR responses. Like how do we take this extremely bad news for us and spin it as a good thing? And like this is them like shoving the swords in the box with the lady in it and then being like, no, she's fine, guys, she's fine. French gaming giant Ubisoft is in the midst of a severe financial crisis. Since early 2024, its stock price has fallen more than 45%. Ugh. This has raised widespread concerns about the company's future, with some analysts predicting bankruptcy or acquisition. It's not an acquisition. They just made I'm not selling my house. I'm just leasing out part of it permanently and walling off that part of the house from where I live, okay? Star Wars Outlaws, the company's new adventure game last July, failed to meet sales targets because it's an Ubisoft game and they can't control their budgets, prompting Ubisoft to lower its revenue forecast for the 2025 fiscal year from 2.3 billion euros to 1.95 billion euros. Uh, oh yeah, and Shadows got delayed. I forgot about that. Shadows did get delayed, and that did hit the stock price a little bit. So yeah, the great auctioning of the Ubisoft estate has begun. Put your bets down. How soon do you think that it's gonna all come apart? Who's gonna keep Rayman in the divorce? I joke, but I do, obviously we just talked about the union and all that. I do hope that a lot of the people who are gonna suffer from the management at Ubisoft get good opportunities after this. And that should probably be it for the news. The live-action Legend of Zelda film is releasing March 26th, 2027. Well, I know what Kat's taking me to. Anyway, I want to talk about stuff that I've watched and or played recently. One of those being something that I actually totally forgot to talk about on the last podcast. Looney Tunes The Day the Earth Blew Up. So this is something that a lot of people don't even know came out. So there was an entire... You know how Warner Brothers is doing that thing where they're just taking completed full movies and I think some TV series and just like shelving them permanently and never releasing them for tax write-off purposes? So they did that with this Looney Tunes movie that was entirely finished and produced. This was a made-for-TV film that was going to air on Adult Swim. And it was, what was it? The way Kat explained it to me, because she knows about this stuff. Essentially, it was in production, or it might have been finished. Like, it's kind of unclear as to how far in development it was when it was announced. But the merger that they did with Discovery happened, and it just kind of got lost in the shuffle and probably shelved for tax write-offs. Who cares about this little made-for-TV Looney Tunes movie? My girlfriend does. But I think as a result of one, the love for the Looney Tunes, as well as the kind of public outcry over this stupid, awful business tactic that's honestly just hurting them in the long run. Because no one wants to work with them anymore. They have been in the process of auctioning off some of these fully completed things to other companies for release, for distribution. One of these being The Day the Earth Blew Up. The one that most people have probably heard of is Coyote vs. Acme, which also just got auctioned off as well to the same company that did The Day the Earth Blew Up. So the reason most people probably haven't heard of this one in particular is that it had like zero marketing. A lot of people blame that on Warner Brothers, but they don't own it, I guess, anymore. They don't own the distribution rights, or I think they auctioned off. I think the distribution rights were what was auctioned off. They don't, so they are like not liable for putting money into advertising. They're not getting money off of it. It pretty much falls to this company. They're called like Ketchup Productions. And like I had never heard of them. So, but it was screening in theaters. It'll probably come to streaming, maybe? I don't know. I actually don't know if it'll come to streaming, but it released in theaters. It might still be in theaters depending on where you are. And I think there's a Blu-ray release that's coming out or something. Kat and I went to go see it in theaters and had a good time. It's fun. It's clearly, it made a lot of sense when I found out it was a made-for-TV movie, because the animation quality is like good. It's very good for a made-for-TV film. It has a little bit of kind of like that interpolated. It's not Flash. Probably isn't Flash. But what else do they use? Toon Boom? I don't know too much about like animation stuff. It has a bit of that interpolated digital look that is like in a theater. It's a weird thing to see, but visually, it is actually a pretty nice looking film. It has a very, I don't know, it reminds me a lot of the what was it called? I think it was just called the Looney Tunes show that aired on Cartoon Network. That was on when I was a kid, and it reminds me of that, just kind of like a modern adaptation of the classic Looney Tunes art style. And I think it looks pretty good for the most part. Backgrounds and lots of like painted stuff. That was fun. The movie is about Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, who grow up together as like adopted brothers. They're raised by this farmer who is like a completely still, almost photorealistic cutout person, which is like very funny. There are some good gags in this movie. And they have to save the world from an alien invasion through hijinks. And you know what? It's fun. Not all the jokes landed for me. Some of them are like, I don't know, kind of lame in like a kiddie way. But I'm not going to hold that too much against a Looney Tunes film. But there are some like genuinely very good visual gags, and the slapstick humor really worked for me. It doesn't introduce. There's a character named, I believe, Petunia Pig, who is another pig. I thought she was new to this movie, but Kat, the expert, informed me that she is actually from the comics, but has never actually been animated before, to her knowledge. So that's actually kind of neat. As soon as she showed up on screen, I clocked her as a character that Kat would have cosplayed when she was in high school. There's just like, Kat went through this phase where she had like Daria hair, and it's like very funny. It's very cute to look back on before I knew her. And I'm like, this is totally when she had like a little short bob haircut. Totally would have done the Petunia Pig cosplay. And she knew I was right, so she couldn't say anything. I say it lovingly. But yeah, it's if you like Looney Tunes and you're into it, yeah, go check it out. It's worth the watch. I think it's cool to get a Looney Tunes thing in theaters. The day the Earth blew up, I would recommend it. And I think that Coyote versus Acme is coming out in a couple months as well. I don't know if they said when they were going to be releasing it, but sometime sort of soon. I mean, the movie's completed. They just got to distribute it. I want to talk about the Severance finale. So the last time I talked about Severance on the last episode was before we had even watched the final episode of the second season. Now, I believe that I said, yeah, I can't picture them ending on a cliffhanger again, because I don't see how much more they could do. And boy, am I a total idiot. Boy, am I so dumb and stupid. Yeah, they ended on a cliffhanger. And I was like, what? What the fuck? That was me. I was pissed off that they ended it on a cliffhanger. It's not quite as big of a cliffhanger, I feel, as the first season, but it's pretty big. The last episode is good. I really like it. It has a lot of good moments. It's got some funny moments. It kind of reinforced how much I like a lot of the characters, or dislike them. And I think so the big mystery that they were building up to the entire season was like, what is this final stage? What's this final phase of this project that Mark has been completing on the severed floor, that he has no idea what it really is? and it's got something to do with his wife, and it's got something to do with all these weird rooms that are like different experiences and stuff. And there's kind of like, and I held some reservations on making more concrete statements about the show, and now it's a fucking cliffhanger. So like, I can't even say anything because I gotta wait like another year for the next season to come out, and then I try to talk about like, oh well, what did it all mean? I did think it was kind of interesting that essentially, I'm gonna spoil it, so you can just skip to the end, up to the whatever, skip past this if you really want to. I'm still recommending Severance. I thought it was interesting that in the final room that she's going into, all these different rooms where she walks in and she has like a severance, she goes back into being her innie form, right? I think, or like a new innie form. It's a little bit unclear. It's mildly unclear. But she's like Gemma when she's outside and when she's in the hallways. And then she walks in and she goes through the severing. And it's interesting then that the final room is basically like a completely blank slate. It's a totally blank slate where she doesn't know anything about herself. And it kind of, to me, and so like they bring up the it's the baby crib that you see earlier in the season. They flash back to their marriage, and fucking, it's like this. It should be an item that brings a lot of complicated, kind of upsetting memories to her, but she's just like totally. She doesn't even like. She has no idea, what she's even looking at. Basically, it means nothing to her, implying that this final phase, this like cold harbor room, is a room. It's like a type of severing where your personality is completely split apart, where it's split apart in the sense that I think the idea is to have they would have multiple different severed personalities. I kind of think that that's what it's supposed to be. That each like fulfill different functions. And I think in a way that kind of, I think it still kind of ties in and complements the reading that I had of it, of the idea of like the corporation being this sort of religious entity that provides structure and faith and purpose and meaning to its workers' lives. There's also the idea that, for the innies, they are people who are defined entirely by their jobs. They're defined entirely by the thing that they do. Which is part of like, them waking up with a completely blank slate after being severed. The Audi version has a whole life. They've got this whole life and backstory and this multifaceted personality. But the innie is completely defined by the work that they do. And I don't know if it's like, if this like complete fracturing, if the idea is like, oh, well, in the end, the ultimate goal for the company is that every employee would be so completely severed in so many different directions, like multiple, practically basically multiple personalities, that every single part of those, like every part of their personality would be separated out into its own thing that could then be flicked on and off at will and totally controlled. I don't know if that's the point. I'm curious as to what the third season has, which will definitely be my lock of the week. It's going to be the last season. It'll happen this time. A couple things I didn't really mention from talking about the show earlier. Namely, like one specific. Okay, there's a couple things. I really love Milchick as a character. I think he's like really funny. There's something really odd about him. Like, he is this middle manager who ascends to the role of manager, and he is so dedicated to the company, but he has this complicated relationship with Lumen, where on one hand he is very extremely committed. Like, he is super precise in his actions, in his words, in his he is so controlled and regulated, and he fits so perfect. He is like perfectly molded into this model employee for this corporation. But at the same time, like, in him doing what he feels is the best way to manage the people in, like, specifically MDR, like the main characters, this, which, you know, to him is like serving this like religious purpose, is to serve Kier, has an immediate conflict with the higher ups, and they're like, don't do that, you're wrong, you're stupid. And that creates like this level of tension in him, where this thing that he has committed his life to is suddenly like pushing back on him. The scene where he gets the fucking L. Ron Hubbard was a black man paintings is wild. We couldn't believe it when that came up. And there's this interesting scene where he's talking to Natalie, who's like the only other, basically the only other black character on the show. I don't know if she's mixed, but she's like, she got a little something in her. And he's like asking her, like, hey, you know those paintings where they took like Kier, the founder of the company, and they made him black to like make me feel more welcome? How did you what did you think of those? And there's pretty clearly like he feels weird about it. Like, he was kind of fine with Kier being a white guy, but as soon as they were like, we're gonna alter his appearance to like appease you, to make you feel more comfortable, it had like the opposite effect, where he felt like suddenly now it was a thing. Like, oh, was I not supposed to relate to Kier? Was it wrong? Was it weird for me to be black and to idolize this man who was white? And like, it feels like now he's starting to think about these things. Like, the thoughts had just never occurred to him, but now that it's been, the racial aspect has come into play, he's like, wait, what's going on? And like, that makes me feel kind of weird, and that feels a little like the company is doing this as a way to like pander, essentially. And it almost feels like that plants the seed of doubt. Like, that's a big moment, I feel, where it plants the seed of doubt as to the trustworthiness and the intent of the company. Of, it kind of feels like they're lying to you. It kind of feels like they're dishonest. And that's like a lot of cold water on his face because he's been so committed his entire life, probably, to this corporation. Like, maybe since childhood. And this sudden feeling, you know, so he like talks to like the only other person he thinks he can talk to about this is Natalie. And God, her actress is, oh my God, I hate Natalie so much. She gives me the heebie-jeebies so bad. Her actress does a great job. She always has this expression, and the way that she emotes is like, she is like incapable of expressing an honest feeling. It's like she just can't let it happen. It's always, there's this visible layer of like plastic sheen on her face where she just like restrains and like keeps it under. And it's kind of implied that she could always be on call with the board. She's got her little Bluetooth earpiece in. And it's like, is she really just like this complete like facsimile of a person who is just totally insincere? Or is it because she has like the company, these godlike religious figures practically breathing down her neck the entire, like her, like every waking moment? And it's like she gives him this smile that is so like she's trying. It's, oh my god, the actress is so good at nailing this expression. And it's like she's trying to smile, but like she can't. And her like lips are making the motion of a smile, but it's like too much, like she's smiling too hard. And her emotions are always like cranked. That's what it feels like. There's no natural ebb and flow where like you smile really big and then it kind of relaxes a little bit. It's always like cranked to what it needs to be. It's like smile, no smile, smile. It's awesome. It's a really interesting moment, and it's intriguing as well the way that sort of this kind of character arc for him progresses to the point where he doesn't turn his back on the company at all, but he it's like he's still committed to the vision, but he doesn't like the company that's carrying it out, or he's starting to harbor resentment for them. He's still super committed to what they're doing, and he's trying to see this whole project through, but it's weird, you know. It's complicated. There's a single shot that's been sticking with me a lot ever since I watched the show. And it's from the episode, I think like 7 or 8, that is entirely focused on Ms. Cobell, where she kind of goes back to this weird farming... It's like a factory town. It's like a falling apart factory town. It's like Detroit. And... just in the middle of nowhere, and I think it's supposed to be, oh man, they show a newspaper or something that has a location. I don't know if I think it's Pennsylvania, but that doesn't feel right. Like it's too far north. Like there's icebergs in the water. It's weird. And you know, they've had this whole, there's all these implications about the religious cult of Lumen and all that. And this episode, the episode like goes all into that. She goes into like, I guess the lady who was like the head mistress, maybe like a nun type figure in whatever organization, like youth organization she was raised in. And like the mother, I guess like mother superior of this whatever, I don't know, like, you know, they aren't super specific. This whole thing about like Cobell clearly really cared about her mother. I don't know if it was like her literal mother, but she really cared about her, and she was always under the impression that this lady, this nun type gal, this old bag, turned off her oxygen in like her final moments and all that, and like basically put her down. She harbors all this resentment for her, so she's going back to like get something very specific, and she thinks that it's in her mother's room, and there's this kind of back and forth about like, you can't go in there. She's like, no one's allowed to go in there until I die. Like everyone she was related to dies, and there's this real gravity that's given to this room, and you think that it must be this really important, crazy thing. And the episode is kind of building up for a while to her going into this room, and eventually she gets the key. She kind of forces her way up the stairs, and the other lady just kind of stays downstairs and just kind of lets it happen. And so there's nothing in the room. There is nothing interesting in the room. It is just like the room that her mother stayed in when she died, while she was dying. And there's no like big secret in there. The big secret thing is like in a totally other location around the house. It's just like there's just this weird reverence for this room, this little location. And Cobell steps inside, and I swear to God, the shot of her standing in the room, like the camera's positioned kind of like behind her, sort of like in the corner, and the shot of this room like took my breath away. It's just like this old room with like peeling, like this old furniture and peeling wallpaper, and it's kind of dim, and the curtains are drawn. They're like these beige kind of cream colored curtains that are faded, and they're a little brownish, and so when the light comes in, it has this off color to it, and the room isn't particularly well lit, so there's just like little shadows in the corners. And I have never seen, it's really like, this made a big impression on me. I have never seen a shot in anything that so accurately captured the spirit of death in a location. When I was in high school, I had to do some volunteer work, and I ended up volunteering at a nursing home, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. It was spiritually, it was absolutely crushing. And the feeling that I was just soaked in for like the 8 hours I had to spend there across like a weekend was I have never felt that anywhere else. There's just this heavy feeling to certain places. I think it's just some human thing that you pick up on when you're around people who are very near to death. And I had totally forgot about that feeling until this one shot that just, it holds on it for a bit, as many shots in this show do. It's a very slow burn show. And it like, I could practically, you can, man, it's so hard to describe. It's like it's something about the composition. I haven't looked at it since we watched the episode, but the biggest draw, like the biggest emotional draw of the shot is the feeling of a lack of presence. There's like a hole in the scene where like all you can feel is that someone isn't there. And you're just looking at her deathbed that's been emptied out. There's like an oxygen machine next to it. And it just like I could picture I could picture death standing at like the bedside. Just like a completely chilling moment that really affected me. Like really, I commend like the DP and the editor for like the way that was color corrected, and the director and all that, and just like, man, that really, it's rare that a single shot from something sticks with me so much in just like a single like, it's not a big focus, it's not a climactic moment, it's almost like an anticlimax. It's more that like it's climactic in the sense that you're learning what's important to Cobell, but not as much like to the plot. It's not very plot relevant. it's I don't know, ugh. It really got me, and I've been thinking about it off and on since watching it. Yeah, this was not very well structured, but that was kind of my thoughts on the second season. Oh, ooh, here's one thing. That whole twist with Helly with the hard R being Helena with the soft A. Actually, like the whole time until the midway point of the season, I noticed something because I saw like a little clip from one of the first episodes of the second season. And I realized that Helena, when she's pretending to be Helly down on the severed floor, Helena intentionally lowers her voice. She does like an Elizabeth Banks thing. Or no, Elizabeth Holmes. That was her name, right? The Theranos person who just gives me the creeps. Like, just, like that, it really... There is something really soulless about looking at that, looking at her. And she would do that same thing. That was one of the things that really creeped me out whenever I watched something about Theranos, is watching footage of Elizabeth Holmes speaking. And she clearly, like, she's dressing like Steve Jobs, and she has these very blank eyes, like she's not really focusing on anything in particular. And her voice, she would like lower her voice to this unnatural gravel to make people respect her more. It's just like I know that is kind of like a subtle psychological thing that sometimes women aren't taken as seriously. But like it was weird. Just something was really uncanny about it. So many things about her were artificial, and Helena does a good job of playing at being Helly, but in retrospect, maybe I'm just dumb. I feel like I can never catch twists coming, but looking back, I can see these actual like little hints. There's like little hints and things that are like red herrings and stuff like that. And the fact that she lowers her voice because that's just what her natural inclination is. And which is ironic because they show that she's been studying like archival footage of Mark and Helly and like stuff that Helly was doing to try to mimic her innie. And then she gets down there and like she totally misses this little detail about this just habit that she does that Helly doesn't do. Yeah. Good show. Still recommending it. And finally, I want to talk about a game that I played called Qomp? Qomp? I don't know. It's Qomp. It's a little indie game from like when did this come out? Like 2021. Yeah. I believe this originated as a game on Newgrounds and then was released under the Atari umbrella. This is published by Atari. I got this on a big Atari sale. Weirdly enough, turns out that Atari happens to own a bunch of things that I've made videos on, like Blood and System Shock. And I had like a whole list because I sent it in like a Discord and I was like, hey, these are the games I can personally vouch for. Wizardry, the Wizardry series, Harvester, Tender Loving Care, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Yeah, but I also ended up picking up Roller Coaster Tycoon and what was it called? Necro, what was it called? They had a big sale. Noctropolis. Anyway, it's a game called Qomp. I'm going to call it Qomp for now. Qomp. Just kind of caught my eye. It seemed sort of interesting, and it was very cheap. So Qomp is a really cool short game. You can play it in approximately how long did it take me? 119 minutes. It took me literally just under 2 hours. It's a puzzle game, I guess. It's like a puzzle, kind of reminds me of like a Celeste or a VVVVVV. A little bit. And it's a really interesting example of exploring a concept entirely through game mechanics, like a real thematic concept through game mechanics. That I'd like to talk about. I guess I'm going to spoil it, but I would recommend that you go play it. So the premise of Qomp is that you are the pong ball who has broken free. It has this very simple monochrome, like black, white, and gray. It's not quite monochrome, but there's like 4 colors in the whole game. Color scheme, very simple, like line work, outlines, all on a black background and stuff. You are the pong ball, and your only input, there is literally one control in the game, and it is the ability to basically bat yourself up and down. So you're in like a room, say, and you will bounce back and forth against the walls, like the Windows screensaver, like the logo screensaver that bounces around the corners of the screen. It's like that. But if you press the button, like on keyboard, it's the space key. As you're going up, you can hit the button and suddenly go down. It will just invert your trajectory, I guess, to like the other vertically. Not horizontally, just vertically. And so you could, for instance, rapidly tap the button to go up and down really fast, and then just kind of go in like basically sort of a straight line from left to right or right to left. There are a lot of... It basically just takes this one concept and this one mechanic, and it does quite a bit with it. About 2 hours worth of content with it. There are hazards. There are like different layouts. You got to press buttons. You got to get keys. There are spikes. There's things that activate once you go over them. There's a cool, cute little mechanic where it turns into Snake, and you have to do these same mechanics, except you leave a trail behind you that will kill you if you run back into it, and you have to make your way to a door that will unlock and then take you out of that mode. And it's very enjoyable. It's a fun little 2-hour experience, and it's a game, by its own admission, about freedom. And I really like the approach that it takes. So at first I was like getting the inkling of like, well, maybe there's something here just based off of the concept. I kind of have, I take things generally at face value, and I don't try to like read super deeply into something unless I feel like it's actually really going for something kind of tips me off that it's got something to say. And that definitely became apparent about halfway through the game. The opening of the game is just the ball, you, being passed between 2 paddles, 2 pong paddles. And every time it hits the paddle, it's like cursing, and like a little curse, like all the squigglies come up over its head in a speech bubble. And the first goal of the game is just to escape from the pong paddles and to get past them as they are kind of automatically tracking you up and down. So like, okay, there's immediately this kind of, there is an immediate thematic foundation that's laid that uses like a cultural reference. You know, Pong is like the first game. Not really, but I mean, like Tennis for Two, it's not that far off. Pong is like such an incredibly basic, early consumer video game that has this recognizable idea, right? Of like, as the player, you are the paddle and you're trying to hit the ball and you're trying to keep the ball from going past. So the immediate spin is, well, what if you're you're the ball and you're trying to get past the paddle? But there's also this idea of this is you're flipping it by taking something which in its original context has no real agency. The ball reacts only to the impacts of the paddles and the angles that the paddles send it towards. So that is its role. That's its function. So now it gets fed up, and it learns that it has the ability, I guess, to alter its trajectory on its own, to do the work of the paddle without the paddle. And so you escape, you go along this track. There's like a bunch of different levels, and every time you finish a level, you go back to this like overworld, sort of like Super Mario World style screen where there's all these different nodes, and you just travel from one node to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And it's completely linear. There are no branching pathways. It's just an indicator of progress. And you go and go and go. And eventually you beat so many levels that you get to a boss. And the boss is like a paddle that you have to hit X number of times, like 3 times to win. And then you beat the paddle and you escape. You escape finally into this void. And this was the point that I was like, wait, hang on. I think there's something going on here. So you escape into this void of total darkness, and the ball is just going. It's just going and going and going and going. It has a little trail behind it, and the camera just starts zooming out slowly until you're just like a single pixel on screen, and then you bloop, you're just black, and then it says part 2. And then part 2 begins, and suddenly you're going back. You're not on a new like level screen. You're actually literally progressing backwards, back through all of the nodes that you visited. The levels themselves are new, but on the map screen, like it's that you're advancing, you're going forward. And then that culminates in its own boss fight, and then that boss fight leads you to part 3, which I remember being kind of short. Like the levels were kind of short. They were like harder, but they were shorter, which I thought was a fine trade-off. And then finally, once you beat the final paddle, the final boss, it's oh god, what's the order that things happen in? So you get to the final boss, and unlike the other bosses, it works in almost the opposite way. It's a paddle that's against a wall of spikes. Now, normally, you would have to, you would be hitting the paddle. But this time, there's like this weird build up to this, because there's a couple rooms in the levels leading up to the final boss where there's like spikes and saw blades and like these hazards you've been dealing with the whole game, but you bounce against them and they just like crash. They just like break off. They break off of the wall. The buzzsaws go right through you, and like you're literally faced with like an unstoppable horde of them flying at you, and they just pass right through you like nothing. And you get back to this boss, this final boss, and it's in this like square room, and the only way that you can win the fight, the way that you actually like deal damage to the boss, is by actually flinging yourself into the spikes, and respawning in the room again, and then just doing that 3 times. And then once that's been done, it starts zooming out and reveals that the room you're in is the ball. it like fills in and it's the ball. So then you zoom out and suddenly there's like two mirrored balls and they are like flying past each other, and now you have to like, you know, do the same like trajectory change thing, but to get them to collide together, and they do, and suddenly the entire color palette of the game changes from a black background with like white on top to a white background, and now like the ball itself is black, the outlines of things are black. It's been totally inverted, and now the control of the game changes. So like the whole time throughout the game, the ball has started and it's broken free of where it was initially. But the only way that it's able to interact with the world is basically replicating the same patterns and the same behavior that it's known before. So it breaks out and it escapes. It escapes finally, and it achieves freedom. And freedom it's exhilarating at first, but it quickly becomes kind of terrifying, where there's no direction, there is no structure. The things that it was working against, it's kind of like Severance, the things that it was working against, the hazards, the stages, all the obstacles, provided structure to its life, and now there is none. And curiously, then the ball begins to travel back. It starts to retrace its steps, and in retracing its steps, ends up looking inward. And I think that there is something kind of, I believe my interpretation is that final boss where you are flinging yourself into the spikes, and then it reveals that this is all going on internally within the ball, is like this realization that until it like accepts what it knows, until it accepts like where it comes from and doesn't try to like run internally from the ways that it was being controlled and oppressed, it isn't really able to move on from that. And moving on from it means a completely different mechanical like interaction. So no longer does pressing the button change your vertical trajectory up or down. Essentially like recreate the hitting of the paddle. You've still been stuck. The only way you can interact with the world is essentially just through the paddle again, but you're doing the paddle without the paddle. It's like becoming your parents or something. Now it's a totally different type of movement that is serpentine and circular, not like the snake minigame, but like if you don't press anything, the ball just rotates around an axis, and then by holding down the button, whenever you press the button, it reverses its rotation. And so you can kind of do that you can alternate between the two different axes and the two different directions to move in a line now. And it's so everything's been flipped, everything's been turned around, and it has come to this new understanding. Like now the ball is finally free, and interestingly, it is also within constraints. It is in this new kind of like dark outlined structure of some sort. It's not the pure black endless void that you get earlier in the game. It's like a structured, very different looking, like I guess architecturally, minimal location. You know, the rest of the game has these kinds of, even with the very minimalist art style, there are these implications of like age. You know, there's like brick textures occasionally. There's old, like, worn down kind of machinery in this monochrome pixel art. There's just this feeling that things have been here for a while. Every time you bump against a surface, it makes a little mark. It makes a little dark spot, as if like it's worn away enough that once you impact it, it kind of chips away at the wall a little bit. And now it is in this new kind of self-defined structure, and it's able to kind of live in its own way. So it's and then the game kind of ends. You move towards the wall, towards the end of the room, and it kind of fades to white, and you get credits. And I thought it was actually like a really nifty, cool, like little experiment in taking mechanics and kind of presenting this story about this theme of breaking free, you know, the urge to break free from whatever constraints you're under, like the emotions of that, kind of going through the going through all this work to escape this establishment that you've been in, whatever like your life has been like, these patterns or whatever, and then suddenly like achieving it and feeling kind of scared and realizing you actually don't know how to live without the structure that you were given before. You know, you're like, fuck, my parents suck. I'm not saying this personally, but like my parents suck and I'm going to go live on my own. And then you're like, fuck, how do I live on my own? I think that's an example probably a lot of people feel like to some extent. And like, how then do you come around to actually not just being free, but being able to use your freedom in a way that benefits your life, and coming around to moving on internally, not just running away, but kind of like internalizing or processing the things that you've been through. You're not really like in denial about it. And ultimately coming out of it with a new way of going about life that is not the same way that you're like, not just mimicking what you came from. And that's all just in like a cute little 2-hour game about a pong ball. It was neat. It has a cool soundtrack as well. Just kind of ambient stuff. It reminded me a lot for some reason of this song that I just could not remember. I looked it up. I felt like I was going crazy because it wasn't like a super duper obscure song. Like I remember listening to it years ago and it had like a decent number of views on it. It's just like a song that's weirdly hard to search for if you don't know the artist name. I was thinking of this. Oh fuck, what's it called? It's called like "This World Is Ours" by Toki Monsta, who's like a Japanese Australian, I think, or Japanese American, I forgot, DJ. And I just remember this song because I really liked it. I listened to a bit of her album. I like her stuff. I haven't listened to it in a bit, so I was re-listening to an album of hers called I've been awake for too long. Creature something. Not Creature Comforts, but Creature Sounds, something like that. Yeah, the reason it was hard to search for is I kept looking up the lyrics. The problem is that the song samples a couple like old covers of like a song called "This World Is Mine," or "The World Is Mine," or "If I Ruled the World," I think, something like that. So the lyrics say like "If I Ruled the World" and these things, but that's not what the song is called. The title, like if like "This World Is Ours," is like a spin on what it's sampling. So I just kept getting stuff that the song was sampling without being able to find the song, and I didn't realize that it was a sample because I remember there being like a male and a female vocalist, and it was just samples. Anyway, go listen to that song. I thought that was a cool song. That's Qomp. I would recommend it. I did just like go through and spoil the whole thing, but if you're curious about playing it, check it out. There's a sequel. It's a little bit pricier. It also looks like a bigger experience, like a couple more hours. So that is probably cool. The reviews seem pretty good on Steam. But yeah, that's Qomp. And I think with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you so much for listening, if you've been listening this far. If you have a question, please leave it in the comments below, but phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I'm taking the new video, I might have mentioned this before, but the new video took a very long time to write, and also is probably going to take a while to edit. It's going to be like over an hour again, and I keep doing this to myself. So I don't know how long it's going to... It'll be out sometime in the next month, so probably like a week or two from now. At the very most, jeez. Yeah. Don't have anything else to say. Bye.